I mean, I'm sorry, but just look at the absolute size of that dog.
Oh my God.
It's practically a horse. I genuinely think if you threw a saddle on it, you could ride it right up to Marble Arch. I mean, it's got calves thicker than mine.
It is massive. And completely out of control by the looks of it. Honestly, the owner looks like he's water skiing behind it across the grass.
Yeah, he's leaning back at a 45-degree angle, just trying to maintain his footing. Brilliant.
Good luck to him.
Right? Mate, watch your step there. Yes, you, right beside me. We are dodging absolute minefields today on this path.
The geese have been spectacularly prolific over the weekend, haven't they?
They really have. Just, step a bit to your left. Perfect. Anyway, as I was saying before, we were so rudely interrupted by the hound of the Baskervilles dragging that poor bloke through the mud. I was sifting through these papers I brought along for our walk today.
Yeah, you've been clutching those since we got off the tube.
I have. Because, well, there's a concept in here that has completely fundamentally rewired my brain this morning.
Go on, then. You've been guarding them like they contain the nuclear launch code, so let's hear it.
Right, so we always think of the sun as just, the weather, right?
Sure.
It's a nice Sunday. The sun's out. Hyde Park is actually bearable. We don't need to huddle under our umbrellas cursing the sky. It's an atmospheric backdrop. But, look, this paragraph right here.
We see.
It describes the sun not as a weather phenomenon, but as a metabolic puppeteer.
Oh, wow. A metabolic puppeteer. That's an incredibly striking phrase.
Isn't it?
It implies intent, or at least, an invisible hand pulling the strings.
Exactly. Pulling the strings of our internal biochemistry to literally dictate how we feel about the people around us.
Right.
It argues that when we talk about the glow of love or the warmth of a new relationship, we aren't just being poetic.
We think we're using metaphors?
Yeah, we think it's poetry, but the author argues we are describing a literal photon-driven biochemical cascade. This entire stack of notes maps solar physics, the actual mechanics of a star, directly onto the architecture of human adoration.
Which completely shifts the paradigm, doesn't it? I mean, it strips romance out of the realm of pure Shakespearean poetry and drops it squarely into the middle of astrophysics and evolutionary biology.
Totally.
Because if you truly break it down, the human body isn't just a vehicle for carrying our brains around to coffee shops. It is an incredibly complex, finely tuned biological antenna specifically calibrated to receive and process solar radiation.
And that is exactly what we are having a proper look at today as we stroll. For our friend walking with us, we're investigating how the literal mechanics of a star mirror and actually physically engineer human connection.
It's a massive topic.
It is. So look at this first section here about basking, just the physical act of sitting in the sun. When the sun's UVB rays hit the skin, mostly, we just think, oh, excellent, I'm working on my tan for the summer.
Yeah, we view it as an aesthetic choice.
Exactly.
Right. But aesthetically pleasing skin is just a secondary byproduct of a massive systemic survival mechanism. It's fundamentally about social cohesion. Let's look at the mechanics of it. When those specific ultraviolet B rays penetrate the epidermis, they trigger the synthesis of vitamin D.
Okay, yeah.
Now, the fascinating thing about vitamin D, which completely alters how you view a sunny day like today, is that it's fundamentally misnamed. It's not actually a vitamin at all.
Wait, how is it not a vitamin? It's in the name. You literally buy it in the vitamin aisle at Boots.
I know it's confusing.
It's cool.
But by strict biological definition, a vitamin is an organic compound that an organism requires in limited quantities but cannot synthesize itself.
Oh, right. So you have to eat it.
Precisely. It must be acquired through diet, like vitamin C from oranges. You can't just stand in a field and magically generate vitamin C.
Fair point.
But vitamin D is synthesized by your own body in direct response to sunlight. Structurally and functionally, it acts as a hormone.
A hormone, like testosterone or estrogen?
Exactly like those. It travels through the bloodstream and binds to receptors all over the body to regulate physiological functions. And this document describes its role beautifully. It calls this hormone the silent foreman in the factory of serotonin.
Okay, let's unpack that for a second. Serotonin is the feel-good neurotransmitter, right? It's the stuff that makes you feel content, safe, and, generally less likely to snap at a waiter.
It regulates mood, social behavior, appetite, and digestion. It is essentially the chemical foundation of social tolerance.
Right.
Without sufficient serotonin, your emotional baseline plummets. Your threshold for irritation just disappears entirely.
Oh, I know that feeling.
We all do.
Yeah.
This is why seasonal affective disorder, or SAD, is such a debilitating condition in the winter months. When the sun retreats in November, the UVB drops, the vitamin D hormone synthesis stalls, the serotonin factory shuts down, and people experience a profound physiological depression.
Which basically makes you a right miserable git.
A miserable git, yes.
And just to clarify for a friend here, calling someone a miserable git is just our British way of saying someone is being incredibly grumpy, cynical, and just generally awful to be around.
A perfect definition.
Thanks. But you just sit indoors, scowling at the television, completely incapable of joy. And the terrifying part is, biologically, you can't help it. Your chemistry is dictating your personality.
It absolutely is.
As the notes say here, you can't exactly be the charismatic life and soul of a party or a sweeping romantic lead if your biology is actively priming you to go hibernate in a dark cave and hoard root vegetables.
Exactly. You are fighting millions of years of evolutionary programming that is actively screaming at you to shut down. But, the rabbit hole goes deeper than just preventing a foul mood.
Does it?
Oh, yeah. Look a bit further down that page where it discusses the direct, immediate effects of UV exposure on the epidermis. It doesn't just synthesize vitamin D. It actually triggers the localized release of beta endorphins right there in the skin cells.
Beta endorphins? Hang on, aren't endorphins what you get from running a marathon? The runner's high. Those are the body's natural opioids, aren't they?
They are. They are endogenous opioid neuropeptides. Chemically, they bind to the exact same receptors in your brain as morphine or prescription painkillers.
Yeah, seriously?
Seriously. They produce profound analgesia pain relief and an intense feeling of well-being and euphoria.
So, just to be crystal clear about what you're saying, standing in direct sunlight is literally getting us high.
In a measurable biochemical sense, yes.
That is wild.
And from an evolutionary standpoint, you have to ask yourself why. Why would nature make the feeling of sunlight physically addictive and mildly narcotic?
Well, presumably because we need it to not die.
Precisely. We need that sunlight to synthesize the vitamin D, to maintain our bone density, to absorb calcium, to keep our immune systems functioning.
Right.
If standing in the sun didn't feel incredibly pleasurable, early humans might have just hidden in the safety of dark caves all day to avoid predators.
Which makes sense. You don't want to get eaten by a tiger.
Exactly. But if they did that, their bones would have turned to chalk and their immune systems would have completely collapsed. Nature needs you to step out of the cave, so it bribes you with opioids.
Well, I'm well chuffed about that arrangement, honestly.
I thought you might be.
And me, for our listener, chuffed just means I am absolutely thrilled and delighted by this. Anything that organically floods my system with natural painkillers and makes me delightfully happy just for going for a walk, I am fully on board with.
That's a good deal.
It is. But hang on, let's connect this back to the romance angle, because this is where the author makes a massive leap. It says here that when you are basking in the sun with a partner, say, sitting on a picnic blanket right over there by the Serpentine, you aren't just enjoying the view of the water together. You are both experiencing a shared solar-induced narcotic high.
The author uses the phrase, a communal dopaminergic response.
Right, a communal dopaminergic response.
Yeah.
It lowers your defensive social barriers and acts as a biological lubricant for pair bonding, which implies the sun literally engineers us to be nicer to each other. It artificially inflates our affection. And being nice is a biological prerequisite for procreation and not ending up alone.
It's softening your defensive edges. Think about what a mild opioid actually does.
It relaxes you.
It removes the low-level hum of anxiety. It floods your system with serotonin, making you more receptive, more generous with your attention, more willing to overlook minor flaws in your partner. You are biochemically primed for intimacy.
Okay, but I have to push back on this, because if I accept this fully, you are completely ruining the magic of travel for me.
How so?
Are you seriously telling me that when people go on a deeply romantic holiday to the Amalfi Coast, or they jet off to a Greek island for 2 weeks, it's not the breathtaking architecture or the shared plates of fresh calamari or the incredible local wine that's making them fall back in love?
Oh.
You're telling me it's literally just two hairless apes lying on a beach getting high on photon-driven biochemical cascades. It feels so incredibly robotic. It strips the soul right out of it.
I think you're looking at it as an either-or situation, and biology doesn't really work like that.
Yeah.
It's not just the biochemistry, but you absolutely cannot separate the subjective romantic experience from the objective biological state.
Okay, go on.
Yes, the architecture is stunning, and the calamari is delicious. But the reason you were so open to enjoying the calamari and the architecture with your partner is because your brain is currently awash in a cocktail of beta endorphins that has actively deleted your baseline relational anxiety.
So the wine helps, but the sun is doing the heavy lifting.
You are quite literally a different, more relaxed biological entity in that Mediterranean sunshine than you are huddled under a gray sky at a bus stop in November, freezing, stressed, and full of cortisol.
That is painfully true.
The sunlight is setting the stage. It's providing the necessary physiological foundation upon which the romance can actually be built. You can't build a beautiful house on a swamp of stress hormones.
Okay, I can accept that. The sun is the canvas, the wine and the calamari are the paint.
Nice analogy.
Thanks. And speaking of setting the stage, look at how this mechanism governs our sense of time. We aren't just reacting to sunlight in the moment, like a lizard on a rock. Our entire internal clockwork is completely tethered to it, the circadian rhythms.
Yes, driven by the suprachiasmatic nucleus, the SCN.
The SCN. I mean, it sounds like a deeply secretive, slightly sinister government intelligence agency. Watch what you say on the phone. We're being monitored by the SCN.
Well, functionally, it kind of is the intelligence agency of your brain.
Is it?
Yeah. It's a tiny region located in the hypothalamus, sitting directly above the optic chiasm, which is the point where the optic nerves from your eyes cross over each other.
So it's plugged directly into the raw data feed from the eyeballs.
Exactly. It contains specialized neurons that measure the exact intensity and wavelength of light in your environment. And based on that raw data, it synchronizes the biological clocks in almost every single cell of your body.
That's incredible.
But this document makes a brilliant, entirely overlooked point about the SCN. We usually talk about it purely in terms of sleep, waking up and going to bed.
Jet lag and all that.
Right. But it's not just dictating when we sleep. It's dictating when we are in the mood.
Yes. It argues that human reproductive hormones are absolute, uncompromising slaves to the sun.
They really are.
Take testosterone in men, for example. The text points out that it generally peaks early in the morning, shortly after the SCN registers the sunrise, signals the pineal gland to halt the production of melatonin, and kicks off the production of daytime get-up-and-go chemicals.
And while female hormonal cycles are undeniably more complex and play out over a longer monthly time frame, their daily baseline fluctuations are historically linked to diurnal light cycles as well.
Right.
We give the moon a tremendous amount of poetic credit for cycles and romance. But we conveniently forget that the moon generates absolutely zero light of its own. It is just a rock.
A very pretty rock.
True, but it's just a mirror reflecting the sun. The sun is the one actually providing the photons.
The sun is the man behind the curtain. But the bit that really made me stop in my tracks was the breakdown of the golden hour. That specific time just before sunset.
Photographers love it.
Oh, if you've ever hung around a wedding photographer, they are absolute fanatics about the golden hour. They will literally drag a bride through a muddy field just to get that light, because everyone looks fantastic, the shadows are soft.
Right.
But the author argues it's not just a visual trick of the lens, it's a biological trigger.
Let's look at the physics of the light at that hour. Why does it actually look golden?
Well, because the sun is lower on the horizon.
Right, and because it's lower, the sunlight has to pass through significantly more of the Earth's atmosphere to reach your eyes than it does at noon.
Okay.
This causes a phenomenon called Rayleigh scattering. The shorter blue and green wavelengths of light scatter away into the atmosphere, leaving only the longer, warmer wavelengths, the oranges and reds, to actually reach you.
And what does that shift to the red spectrum actually do to us? Listen to this sentence. This profound shift in light temperature toward the red end of the spectrum is detected by the SCN, which signals the body to begin winding down cortisol production and simultaneously increases the production of oxytocin.
Ah, the cuddle hormone.
Exactly, oxytocin, the chemical of trust, of bonding, of physical touch. So as the sun visually retreats and turns red, our bodies naturally chemically shift gears from this highly alert, stressed productivity mode of the daytime directly into bonding mode.
It makes total sense.
The author says this is biologically why the classic dinner and a movie date format is so universally successful. We are literally genetically programmed by the cooling of the light to seek the safety of the tribe and the physical warmth of a partner as the sun disappears.
It's a beautifully elegant evolutionary system. When it gets dark, the predators come out, the temperature drops. You need to be close to someone to share body heat and watch each other's backs.
That's right.
But think about the hilarious alternative scenario they mentioned in the notes. If you try to woo someone at 10 in the morning under the flickering, harsh, blue-white fluorescent lights of a corporate office,
Oh, God.
you are actively fighting millions of years of solar-calibrated hardware.
Because the light is telling their brain a completely different story.
Exactly. At 10 a.m., under bright blue light, your partner's SCN is screaming at their nervous system, "Hunt, gather, work, survive the day." It is pumping out cortisol and adrenaline. It is absolutely not saying, look deeply into this person's eyes, lower your defenses, and form a vulnerable emotional pair bond.
That is genuinely hilarious, but so undeniably true. Imagine asking someone on a deeply intimate romantic date to a brightly lit stationery cupboard in the middle of a Tuesday morning.
Terrible idea.
It just feels instinctively deeply wrong in your bones. You're pushing a boulder up a hill. You're far better off just waiting 12 hours for the sun to do the heavy biochemical lifting for you.
Timing is everything, and timing is dictated by the star.
But see, that raises a massive, slightly tragic question for me. If our entire romantic baseline, our oxytocin, our reproductive biology, is tethered to this big yellow orb in the sky, dictating the schedule, what on earth happens to night shift workers? Are they just constantly fighting an unwinnable war against their own romantic biology?
It's a very serious physiological question, actually. And the medical data on shift workers entirely backs up your concern.
Right.
When you invert your circadian rhythm, or rather when you try to force an inversion because you can't ever fully convince your SCN that midnight is midday, you suffer massive systemic hormonal disruption.
Because the SCN knows you're lying.
The SCN only listens to light. So if you're awake at 3 a.m. in artificial light and sleeping at 2 p.m. with blackout curtains, the system fractures.
Oh.
Their cortisol peaks at the wrong times, leading to chronic stress. Their melatonin is suppressed when they desperately need to sleep. And yes, their reproductive hormones and those crucial social bonding neurochemicals, the serotonin and the oxytocin,
Yeah.
are thrown into absolute chaos.
So when it comes to human connection, they are practically operating a ship with a broken compass in a hurricane.
It just makes every relational interaction significantly harder. They have to rely far more heavily on conscious, exhausting mental effort. They have to actively communicate, actively plan intimacy, actively manage their moods because they simply do not have the natural, solar-driven hormonal tailwind pushing them gently toward bonding at the end of the day.
That's rough.
The sun isn't doing the heavy lifting for them. They have to generate the warmth entirely themselves.
Wow. That actually makes me profoundly respect anyone who manages to hold down a healthy, loving relationship while working the night shift at a hospital or driving a lorry. They are practically defying gravity.
They really are.
Which, actually, let's step off the path for a second. Let's stand over here and near this massive oak tree, away from the cyclists, because this next section, I genuinely need us to wrap our heads around the physics here, and I don't want to get run over while we do it.
The nuclear fusion versus romantic friction section. I was wondering when we'd finally get to the actual astrophysics.
Right. We are sifting through the literal mechanics of the sun's core now. The author drops this incredible line. If you want to understand why human relationships are so bloody complicated, so prone to resistance and explosion, look no further than the heart of the sun.
Okay.
The sun operates on nuclear fusion, which they brilliantly relabel here as forced intimacy.
Intimacy. It's a fantastic, slightly terrifying metaphor.
Isn't it just?
Let's look at what is actually happening deep in the solar core. You have countless billions of hydrogen atoms. And hydrogen atoms, specifically their nuclei, which are just solitary, positively charged protons, naturally repel each other.
Because they have the same electrical charge. It's like when you have two magnets and you try to push the two north poles together. They violently slide away from each other. They refuse to touch.
Exactly. That natural electromagnetic repulsion in physics is called the Coulomb barrier. It's a fundamental mathematical law of the universe that these positively charged particles do not want to be anywhere near each other.
Right.
But in the core of the sun, the pressure from the gravity of all that surrounding mass is so incomprehensibly immense, and the heat is so unimaginable that they are forced together anyway. They're pushed so close that a different, stronger force, the strong nuclear force, takes over.
And then what?
They overcome the Coulomb barrier and smash into each other to form a completely new, heavier element, helium.
And when they fuse into helium, what happens?
When they fuse, the new helium atom actually weighs slightly less than the two original hydrogen atoms combined. That tiny bit of missing mass doesn't just disappear, it is converted into a staggering, violent amount of energy, according to Einstein's E equals mc squared.
Right. Yeah.
That energy radiates outward. That energy is sunlight.
Okay, I followed the physics there. Now, let's map it to human behavior, because this is where it gets incredibly relatable. The text argues that the Coulomb barrier is the ultimate cosmic metaphor for the human ego.
Oh, I like this.
Every individual has their own personal Coulomb barrier. Our egos, our entrenched baggage, our fierce preference for independence, our stubborn desire to eat the last biscuit without asking.
Which is a very real psychological phenomenon. We are, by our nature, fiercely independent, self-preserving creatures.
We really are.
By the time we are adults, we have our rigid routines, our fiercely guarded personal space, our complex defense mechanisms. We don't naturally want to merge our lives entirely with someone else because fusion requires sacrificing a massive part of our autonomy. You have to give up a piece of your mass.
Oh, absolutely. And I love that they use the word baggage. If you think about it, when we say someone has baggage in a relationship, we mean their emotional history, the past trauma, the bad habits, the lingering trust issues from previous disastrous breakups.
The heavy stuff.
Yeah, and for our friend listening, when we say baggage, we don't mean actual suitcases. We mean all that emotional weight you drag around. It's all the heavy, invisible armor you carry that makes you instinctively push other people away when they get too close. Your baggage is your personal Coulomb barrier. You repel intimacy to protect the core.
Yes. So the author proposes that to overcome that human Coulomb barrier and form a true bond, a psychological fusion, you need the exact same two ingredients that a star needs. You need immense external pressure and you need internal heat.
Okay, so the external pressure, in human terms, what is that? Societal norms. The pressure from your parents asking when you're going to settle down.
That's certainly part of it.
The biological ticking clock of wanting to start a family, or honestly, just the sheer economic pressure of trying to afford rent on a shared flat in London.
All of the above. They are environmental gravitational forces pushing you together into a shared space. But pressure alone is dangerous. Well, if you only have external pressure, say, you marry someone purely because your family demands it, or because you need to split the rent. That forced proximity just causes immense resentment. The Coulomb barrier holds, and you just constantly grind against each other. To achieve fusion, you also need the internal heat.
The passion, the infatuation, the undeniable chemistry.
Exactly. The author Riley notes, to overcome the psychological Coulomb barrier, you need the heat of perhaps just a very, very good first date.
That's brilliant.
When you have enough internal heat and enough external environmental pressure, the two human atoms overcome their natural repulsion. They drop their defenses and merge into a we. And the emotional energy released in that terrifying moment of vulnerability and fusion is what we conventionally call love.
It's incredible. Do you know what it really is? It's like trying to get onto the central line at Bank Station during rush hour.
Oh, God.
Have you subjected yourself to that nightmare recently?
Unfortunately, yes. It is a grueling test of the human spirit.
Right. Think about the physics of the platform. Everyone standing there naturally repels each other. You have your personal space bubble. You don't want to touch anyone. You're actively avoiding eye contact. You're clutching your briefcase to your chest like a shield.
Trying to breathe.
That is the human Coulomb barrier in action. But then the train arrives, the doors open, and the sheer external pressure of 1,000 frustrated commuters pushing from behind forces you into absolute shoulder-to-shoulder suffocating intimacy with a complete stranger. You are fused. It's an absolute faff, honestly.
Faff. That is certainly one word for it.
Yes, a colossal faff. And mate, for our listener, a faff just means an undertaking that is overly complicated, deeply bothersome, and usually a massive drain on your will to live. It's just a hassle.
Very accurate.
But going back to the astrophysics, look at this next concept. We need to stay by the tree for this. Hydrostatic equilibrium. I really want to break this down because when I read this, I felt like I had discovered the secret instruction manual to every marriage that has ever existed.
Hydrostatic equilibrium. It is the defining characteristic of a stable star.
Okay, so what is it?
Let's define the physical mechanics first. A star like our sun isn't just a peaceful glowing ball. It is engaged in a permanent, unimaginably violent tug-of-war.
Yeah.
Gravity is an incredibly powerful, relentless force pulling all of that stellar mass inward.
Right.
Gravity wants to crush the entire sun down into a tiny, infinitely dense point.
Gravity is the ultimate crusher.
But, as we just discussed, the nuclear fusion happening in the core creates a massive amount of outward pressure. Millions of nuclear explosions happening every single second, violently pushing outward against the weight of the star.
So you have gravity constantly pulling in and fusion constantly pushing out.
Precisely. And in a stable star, those two opposing forces perfectly dynamically balance each other. That state of perfect tense balance is called hydrostatic equilibrium. That is the only reason the sun stays the exact same size in the sky every day.
Yeah.
If gravity wins the tug-of-war, the star collapses under its own weight. If the outward pressure of fusion wins, the star literally blows itself apart in a supernova.
It's mind-blowing that we are warmed by a permanent standoff. Now, apply it to the text. This hydrostatic equilibrium is exactly what a healthy human relationship looks like.
Right.
The author describes gravity here as neediness, possessiveness, jealousy, the desperate desire to completely consume the other person's time and identity. If gravity wins in a relationship, if you are too needy, too controlling, the whole thing collapses under its own suffocating weight into a dense, miserable wreck.
You crush the life and the individuality right out of the partnership.
Exactly. But on the flip side, the outward pressure is independence. The need for personal space, the desire for autonomy. The text jokingly calls it the sudden urge to go find oneself on a silent retreat in Bali.
We all know someone who's done that.
We do. But if the outward pressure of independence is too high and there isn't enough gravitational commitment holding you together, the relationship just dissipates. It blows apart into the vacuum of space. You simply drift away from each other until you're essentially strangers sharing a postcode.
Listen to this summary line here. Love, like a star, is a violent, ongoing negotiation between two opposing forces that somehow manages to produce light instead of a catastrophic explosion.
That is brilliant.
I genuinely think that is quite possibly the most accurate, unsentimental description of long-term commitment I have ever encountered.
It really is, because it reframes what a good relationship is. We are sold this fairy tale that a good relationship is this peaceful, placid lake where nothing ever happens and everyone is always calm.
A Disney movie.
Yeah, but it's not. It's an active, highly dynamic tension. You are constantly, daily balancing the deep human need to be close to someone with the equally deep human need to be your own distinct person.
And the key word is active. You have to actively maintain that equilibrium. If one person starts pulling too hard, displaying too much gravity, texting constantly, demanding all their partner's time, the other person instinctively pushes back with more outward pressure to try and maintain their boundaries and restore the balance.
Which inevitably manifests as an argument.
Always.
Oh, speaking of drifting in space, actually, wait, let's keep walking. Come on, past the oak tree, back toward the path. Because this next section, called Gravitational Gossip, hits painfully close to home for anyone navigating modern dating apps. Have you heard of the term orbiting?
I believe it's a relatively new addition to the digital dating lexicon. A cousin of ghosting, if I'm not mistaken.
It is exactly that. The text defines it perfectly. In modern dating, orbiting is when someone completely stops talking to you. They won't reply to your text messages, they continuously cancel plans to meet up, but they still religiously watch every single one of your Instagram stories.
Huh?
They like your posts, they hover on the periphery of your digital life.
Ah, yes. It's a rather cowardly way of maintaining a psychological presence in someone's life without assuming any of the actual risk or responsibility of a genuine connection.
It is absolute rubbish, frankly. It drives people mad. But in the solar system, orbiting is everything. The author points out the irony. The Earth loves the sun enough to stay close to it, to bask in its warmth, but it has enough momentum to avoid committing cosmic suicide by crashing directly into the fiery core.
Which brings us to orbital mechanics, the concept of the Lagrange point.
Right. What exactly is a Lagrange point? I've heard it used in hard sci-fi novels, usually right before a spaceship explodes.
In celestial mechanics, a Lagrange point is a very specific mathematical position in space where the gravitational pull of two large masses, let's say the Earth and the Sun, precisely equals the centripetal force required for a much smaller object to move with them.
Okay, so?
It's a point of perfect gravitational equilibrium. If you park a satellite in a Lagrange point, it just stays there. It requires almost no fuel to maintain its position. It's the ultimate cosmic parking spot.
Oh, that's brilliant. So the text argues, this Lagrange point of the heart is where the best, most effortless relationships live. It's that perfect parking spot where you aren't constantly fighting to stay together and you aren't drifting apart.
Right.
But then it compares different types of toxic dating personalities to planets. Listen to this. Some partners are like Mercury tidally locked, always showing the exact same face to the heat, utterly scorched.
Tidally locked. Let's break that down. In astronomy, when a planet is tidally locked to its star, it means its rotation period perfectly matches its orbit. So one side of the planet is in permanent, blistering, irradiated daylight, and the other side is plunged into permanent, freezing darkness.
Ouch.
As a metaphor for a person in a relationship, that implies someone who has allowed themselves to be completely consumed by their partner. They have no independent rotation of their own, no friends, no hobbies. They're just scorched by proximity, living entirely in the glare of the other person.
That sounds absolutely exhausting and terrifying. And then it describes the exact opposite extreme. Others are like Pluto-distant, cold, completely eccentric orbit, and barely aware that the sun even exists.
Right. They are in the solar system, technically speaking, but they offer absolutely no warmth to the partner, and they receive very little in return. They are emotionally frozen.
So what we are all desperately looking for on these dating apps is the Goldilocks zone, the habitable zone. In astrobiology, that's the precise distance from a star where liquid water can exist on the surface of a planet. Not so close that the oceans boil away into steam, and not so far that they freeze solid into ice.
And in human connection, as the notes argue, the Goldilocks zone is that precise emotional distance where you can deeply feel the other person's warmth without being suffocated or smothered.
Yeah.
You are close enough to be sustained, but you retain enough atmosphere of your own to actually stay alive.
Yes. Your own atmosphere, meaning your own distinct life. Your weekly football match with your mates. Your independent career. Your bizarre hobby of collecting vintage teapots.
Whatever it is.
Exactly. I love that imagery. If you get too close to the sun, your atmosphere is literally stripped away by the solar wind and you become a barren, molten rock like Mercury. Too far, and you're a frozen wasteland like Pluto. The author boldly claims that finding this precise orbital resonance with another human being is the single greatest engineering feat any of us will ever undertake.
I would tend to agree with that assessment. Because it requires constant, active, exhausting adjustment. Orbits in the real universe naturally decay over time, and gravitational influences from other massive bodies, which in human terms translates to demanding jobs, sudden family crises, financial stress, constantly pull on your orbit, threatening to destabilize the relationship.
So you have to keep firing the engines.
Remaining in the Goldilocks zone isn't just a matter of dumb luck. It requires active thruster firing. It requires tedious, ongoing communication.
But let me challenge this author for a second, because tying this back to the modern daters and this annoying orbiting phenomenon on social media, isn't orbiting just a pseudoscientific excuse for being flaky?
How so?
The Earth stays close to the sun out of a majestic balance of cosmic physical forces. But modern daters, it feels like they are just terrified of crashing into the sun, so they deliberately stay way out past the orbit of Mars, just watching through a telescope. They want the light, they want the validation of a relationship, without experiencing any of the gravity.
That is a highly astute observation. Yes, they want all the benefits of the solar system, the attention, the ego boost of someone liking their photos, without contributing a single ounce of mass to the hydrostatic equilibrium of a real bond. They are fundamentally afraid of the friction. They are terrified of the vulnerability required to overcome the Coulomb barrier.
They are afraid of the heat.
Exactly. They don't want to get burned. And to be entirely fair to them, well, the heat can be incredibly dangerous, which actually flows perfectly into the underlying logic of the next section I saw here regarding solar flares. Because the sun isn't just a gentle, glowing ball of warmth keeping our planet cozy. It is a terrifyingly violent, unpredictable beast.
Oh, mate, look out. Did you hear that?
The swans.
Yeah, the swans over there on the edge of the Serpentine are going absolutely mental over a discarded piece of bread. They are vicious creatures. Let's give them a very wide berth.
Agreed.
Right, solar flares. The document says, the sun isn't a static, peaceful object. It's a roiling, chaotic mess of magnetic fields and superheated plasma. And occasionally, without much warning, it violently chucks out something called a coronal mass ejection, a CME.
A CME is an astonishing, terrifying cosmic event. It is literally millions of tons of superheated plasma and highly charged magnetic field from the solar corona being violently expelled outward into space at millions of miles an hour.
That's horrifying.
If a large enough CME hits Earth squarely, it carries enough electromagnetic force to knock out our GPS satellites, permanently fry global power grids, and cause widespread, catastrophic technological chaos.
And the text maps this apocalyptic space weather directly to a couple having a massive Barney.
A massive Barney.
Yes. Now, I don't need to define what a Barney is for you, but for our friend listening, having a Barney means getting into a massive, loud, intense argument over absolutely nothing. You just completely lose the plot.
A sudden explosion of tempers?
Exactly. And the physics analogy here is unbelievably spot on. It says, just as a literal solar flare is caused by magnetic field lines getting twisted tighter and tighter until they suddenly snap, romantic flares are caused by the invisible tension of two separate lives being tightly woven together in a confined space.
That concept of the twisting of magnetic lines is the key to the whole metaphor. In the physical sun, different parts of the star actually rotate at different speeds. The equator spins faster than the poles.
Okay.
This differential rotation physically twists the sun's internal magnetic fields tighter and tighter and tighter, winding them up like a massive rubber band until snap, the structure breaks, and all that stored kinetic energy is explosively released.
And in a relationship, you are twisting those lines every single day. You know exactly how it happens. When the pressure gets too high, snap, you find yourself screaming about whose turn it is to take the recycling bins out. But you're not actually releasing anger over the bins. You're releasing months of stored up, twisted, magnetic tension.
That is such a profound psychological realization.
Yeah.
The argument is rarely, if ever, actually about the bins or the dishwasher.
Yeah.
The bins are merely the catalyst for the snap. The magnetic tension has been silently building for weeks, from stress at work, from tiny unsaid miscommunications, from minor resentments about how loudly they chew their food.
Yeah, the chewing always gets you.
It does. The flare is just the inevitable release valve for the accumulated pressure.
Right. So when your partner completely loses the plot and starts crying over a dirty tea mug left on the coffee table, they aren't actually grieving the mug. The mug just broke the magnetic field line. But the real question is, how do you survive a CME without your relationship's entire power grid going down and burning the house to the ground?
The document provides the astrophysical answer: shielding. Earth survives these massive solar flares because our planet has an incredibly robust magnetosphere. Deep in the center of the Earth, our spinning molten iron core generates a massive magnetic field that extends far out into space, acting as an invisible deflector shield.
Okay.
When the deadly, highly charged radiation from a CME hits us, the magnetosphere catches it, deflects the worst of it, and funnels the remaining energy toward the north and south poles, which beautifully interacts with our atmosphere to create the auroras, the northern lights.
Oh, wow. I never realized that's what the northern lights were. That's actually beautiful. So the Earth takes this incredibly destructive, lethal force, catches it with its shield, and turns it into something breathtakingly beautiful.
Exactly.
As long as the shield holds. And mapping that to humans, the text says a long-term relationship desperately needs its own magnetosphere. It defines this as a deep, unshakable foundation of trust, shared history, and mutual respect. That shield protects the core bond from the inevitable, occasional high-energy outbursts of anger.
Because if you don't have that shield, think about the tragic fate of Mars. Mars is a cautionary tale. Mars actually lost its internal magnetic field billions of years ago. Its core cooled down and stopped spinning.
Oh, dully.
Yes. And because it didn't have a magnetosphere to act as a shield, the solar wind and incoming CMEs literally stripped away its entire atmosphere over millions of years. It broiled away the oceans and left the planet a barren, irradiated dead rock.
Oh, that is incredibly heavy. So the author is saying if your relationship doesn't have a strong pre-existing foundation of trust, if you haven't built that iron core, then one big flare, one really bad argument can completely strip away your entire emotional atmosphere. It evaporates the affection and leaves the relationship completely barren and dead.
Precisely. You have to expect the flares. They're inevitable. A passionate, high-heat love wouldn't be passionate without the occasional spark of friction. The sun wouldn't be the sun without flares. It would be a dead star. You just have to make sure your internal satellites, your mutual respect, your commitment to fighting fair are properly hardened against the blast.
That is brilliant. Hardened satellites.
Right.
I am absolutely going to use that next time I have a massive Barney overloading the dishwasher incorrectly. Darling, please calm down. I'm simply releasing built-up magnetic tension. I suggest you check the integrity of your magnetosphere.
Oh, dear.
I am sure that will go down wonderfully. It will immediately de-escalate the situation.
I highly doubt that. Please let me know which couch you end up sleeping on when you try that experiment.
Oh, it'll be the shed mate. Right, let's keep moving. Look at this next section here. The spectroscopy of a soulmate. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. This bit I might need you to actively tutor me on, because I was genuinely struggling to properly wrap my head around the quantum science of it.
Spectroscopy. It sounds intimidating, but it is arguably the single most important analytical tool in all of modern astronomy. Without it, We would know almost nothing about the universe.
Right, so the text starts with a basic premise we all know from primary school. If you pass sunlight through a glass prism, it breaks into a spectrum, a rainbow. The classic Pink Floyd album cover, I understand that.
Simple enough.
But then it mentions these bizarre things called Fraunhofer lines. It says they are dark, missing gaps where specific chemical elements have absorbed the light. And that by looking at these tiny black lines, scientists sitting on Earth can tell exactly what a star millions of light years away is made of. How does that actually physically work? Is it like a barcode printed on the sun?
It is exactly like a barcode, but to understand why it's there, we have to look at how light travels. Let's break this down mechanically. So, the core of the sun is incredibly hot and dense, and the fusion happening there emits light in a continuous, perfect, full spectrum. It generates every single color of the rainbow, seamlessly blended together into white light.
Okay, full rainbow leaving the core. Got it.
But before that perfect rainbow of light can escape into the vacuum of space and travel to our prism on Earth, it first has to pass through the cooler, gaseous outer atmosphere of the sun itself. Now, this outer atmosphere is swirling with different chemical gases: hydrogen, helium, calcium, magnesium, iron.
Right, a cloud of gas.
Now we get to the quantum mechanics. Every element on the periodic table has a totally unique atomic structure, and the electrons orbiting these atoms can only jump between very specific, rigidly defined energy levels. To make a jump to a higher level, an electron must absorb a photon of light that contains the exact, precise amount of energy required for that specific jump.
I'm tracking with you so far.
And in physics, the energy level of a photon corresponds exactly to a very specific color or wavelength of light.
Ooh, I think I see where this is going. So it's like a highly specific tool booth. Like the electron will only lift the barrier if you pay it with the exact correct change, which in this case is a very specific shade of blue.
That is a phenomenal analogy. Yes, exactly like a highly specific toll booth. The cooler gas in the star's atmosphere acts like a massive filter. The magnesium atoms in the sun's atmosphere demand a specific toll, so they steal all the incoming photons that correspond to one very specific shade of green.
Yeah.
The hydrogen atoms steal a very specific shade of red to make their electron jumps.
Oh, wow.
So when the rest of the light finally escapes the star and reaches us here on Earth, those specific colors have been kidnapped. They've been absorbed.
So when you run that sunlight through a prism in a lab, you don't actually see a perfect Pink Floyd rainbow.
No. You see a rainbow with sharp, stark, black vertical lines missing from it, like someone took a black marker and drew a barcode over the colors. Those missing black barcodes are the Fraunhofer lines. Because we know exactly which elements steal which colors in a laboratory, we can look at the barcode of a distant star and say, it's missing the green line and the yellow line. Therefore, that star contains magnesium and sodium.
That is genuinely profoundly mind-blowing. Scientists don't figure out what the sun is made of by looking at the light that is there. They know what it's made of by looking at what's missing.
Yes. The missing light tells the entire story of the star's composition. And look at how the author masterfully maps this concept to human romance. Love is similarly spectral. When you break love down through an emotional prism, it isn't just one monolithic thing. It is a complex combination of very different wavelengths.
Yes, let's look at how they categorize them. You have infrared. Now, in physics, infrared radiation is essentially heat. It's the warmth you feel from a radiator. In the author's metaphor, this is the warmth of a relationship. The quiet physical comfort, the casual hand-holding, the mundane intimacy of sitting under a shared duvet on the sofa watching a terrible film.
The cozy stuff?
Exactly. It's quiet, it's largely invisible to the outside world, but you feel it deeply in your bones.
Then moving up the spectrum, you have visible light. The author cynically but accurately calls this the image. This is what we project outward, what we show the world. It's the curated couple's photos on social media, the charming stories you tell at dinner parties, the social performance of the relationship.
And finally, at the top end of the energy spectrum, you have ultraviolet, the intensity. This is the highly charged, high-energy stuff, the stuff that can actually mutate your DNA.
The danger stuff.
Yeah. This represents the deep, transformative power of a long-term partner to completely alter the trajectory of your life, your beliefs, your identity. And the author notes, if you only have visible light, you don't have a relationship, you just have a shared Instagram account. If you only have ultraviolet, the relationship is probably exhausting, chaotic, and highly toxic. You need the full spectrum to sustain life.
But here's the absolute genius of the overarching metaphor. The text says, A true soulmate is someone whose emission lines perfectly match your absorption lines. They fill the gaps in your spectrum.
I adore this bit. If you are naturally missing a bit of confidence, let's call it the magnesium line of your personality, and your partner is naturally radiating it, they fill in your barcode. The resulting light is complete.
It implies a deep psychological truth, that none of us are a continuous, perfect, flawless spectrum. We all have dark, missing Fraunhofer lines in our personalities. We have deep-seated insecurities, blind spots, areas where we are emotionally cool and absorb energy from a room rather than radiating it. The author suggests that we spend our entire lives unconsciously searching for someone who doesn't just shine a blinding light on us, but who genuinely, precisely fills in our specific missing barcodes.
So what happens if your wavelengths don't align? The text says, if the lines don't match, the light looks off. It's a muddy, sickly color that fails to sustain life. Have you ever been around a couple exactly like that?
Oh, definitely.
Where on paper they look perfectly fine, they are both attractive and successful, but the light they emit together just feels deeply uncomfortable and muddy. You just want to leave the room.
Absolutely. The orbital resonance is wrong, because they are likely absorbing the exact same wavelengths. If you put two highly anxious people who both need constant reassurance together, they are competing for the same emotional energy rather than complementing each other's Fraunhofer lines. It's a profound scientific way to look at compatibility. It's not about finding someone identical to you. It's about finding someone whose emissions perfectly match your gaps.
That is just gorgeous. But we probably shouldn't get too misty-eyed and romantic just yet, because the next section brings us crashing violently right back down to Earth. The burn in the red giant phase. Let's walk over toward the lake here. Get a bit of a breeze.
Ah, yes. The inevitable dark side of the light. We have to remember as we romanticize the sun that it is, at its core, a colossal, unshielded, roaring nuclear reactor that would quite happily and efficiently kill every living thing on this planet if given the chance.
Right. It's the ultimate toxic relationship if you don't have strict boundaries in place. The text points out that UV radiation is a constant lethal threat. It directly causes DNA damage, cellular mutation, and cancer. The melanin production in our skin, the tan we all crave on holiday, is not a beauty feature. It is essentially a desperate, microscopic defensive wall built by our terrified skin cells to protect our nucleus from being irradiated.
And this maps directly to the concept of the burn in love. Too much unchecked intensity inevitably leads to psychological burnout. The author explicitly mentions a rare medical condition called solar urticaria.
Yes, I had to look this up. It's where people are literally genuinely allergic to the sun. If they step outside into direct sunlight, they immediately break out in severe hives and rashes.
Yeah.
It's an extreme immune response. Their body treats the light as a hostile invader.
And the text draws a brilliant psychological parallel to people who find the intensity of deep emotional connection, physically or psychologically repulsive. They suffer from emotional urticaria. When a partner gets too close, when the light of intimacy shines too brightly on them, their psychological immune system registers it as a lethal threat and attacks it. They sabotage the relationship. They push people away to protect themselves from the radiation.
Because the sun demands respect. You can't just stare at it directly without going completely blind. You can't spend 24 hours a day in the relentless, unblinking glare of your partner's undivided attention. The author notes, if you don't build in time apart, you'll end up with the emotional equivalent of a grade 3 burn. You desperately need shade.
Yeah, you absolutely do. If you look at human history, the most enduring successful civilizations are those that learn to harvest the sun's immense energy through a filter, whether that's through agriculture, modern solar panels, or simply designing architecture that provides cooling, shade, and courtyards. A healthy relationship is exactly the same. You need boundaries to filter the intensity so it powers you rather than incinerating you.
Which brings us to the life cycle. The life cycle of the star and the corresponding life cycle of love. This bit, I have to admit, it made me genuinely a bit emotional reading it on the tube this morning.
The stellar evolution section. It is a sobering perspective.
Yeah. So the text outlines the astrophysics clearly. The sun is currently in what astronomers call its main sequence. This is the long, highly stable period of its life. It's been sitting in this sequence burning steadily for roughly 4.5 billion years, and it will do it for a few billion more. In a human relationship, this represents the decades where things just work. You've survived the early chaos. You've figured out your daily routines. The hydrostatic equilibrium is stable.
But the crucial point is that the fuel powering the fusion does change over time.
Exactly. It says the raw, highly explosive, unpredictable hydrogen of youthful lust is eventually inevitably replaced by the heavier, denser, more stable helium of deep companionship and shared history. But eventually the hydrogen runs out completely, the youth is gone.
In stellar terms, when a star like our Sun finally exhausts the hydrogen fuel in its core, the hydrostatic equilibrium fails. Gravity takes over, and the core begins to collapse inward. But this violent collapse creates so much intense pressure and heat that the outer layers of the star are actually forced to expand massively. The star balloons outward into a monstrous phase called a red giant.
Swallowing Mercury, Venus, and in all likelihood the Earth in flames.
Yes, it is a rather grim apocalyptic forecast for our local planetary neighborhood in about 5 billion years' time. But look at the profound human mapping the author does here. The red giant phase of a long-term relationship. It's the stressful time in middle age when the relationship suddenly needs to expand to encompass far more mass.
Having children, dealing with aging and sick parents, navigating massive career shifts, health issues, the relationship has to balloon outward to cover all this terrifying new territory. Because the core fuel, the easy, carefree intimacy of your 20s has fundamentally changed. And it says some relationships simply can't handle this massive structural transition. When the hydrogen runs out and pressure builds, they go supernova.
A supernova is the most spectacular, violent death of a massive star.
Yeah.
It literally blows itself to pieces in an explosion that can outshine an entire galaxy, and it leaves behind nothing but a dark, crushing black hole.
A violent, spectacular, highly public ending that destroys everything in its blast radius and leaves a gravitational black hole where a heart used to be. That is gut-wrenching. That's the messy, catastrophic divorce that destroys the family unit, fractures the entire friend group, and leaves a literal void that consumes everyone around it.
But there is the other path, and this is the beauty of our specific star. The fate of our Sun won't be a supernova. It simply isn't massive enough to explode like that. After its red giant phase, it will shed its outer layers relatively peacefully into space as a beautiful planetary nebula, and the core that is left behind will collapse into a white dwarf.
A white dwarf.
Yeah.
Smaller, less flashy, but incredibly dense and hot, glowing gently in the dark for billions of years on stored energy alone.
The physics of a white dwarf are fascinating. It's no longer performing nuclear fusion. The active explosive burning has entirely stopped. It is held up against the crush of gravity entirely by something called electron degeneracy pressure, which is the stubborn quantum mechanical refusal of electrons to occupy the same space. And because it's no longer burning, it just slowly, gently radiates the immense heat it generated over its entire active lifetime. It will glow consistently and reliably for trillions of years, vastly longer than the current age of the entire universe.
See, I was actually incredibly moved by that. Thinking of a white dwarf as the ultimate scientific metaphor for the final stage of enduring love. You think of those elderly couples sitting quietly together on a park bench, maybe exactly like that couple sitting right over there by the water feeding the ducks. They aren't in the explosive, flashy, hydrogen-burning phase of their 20s anymore. They aren't the stressed, expansive red giant burdened by raising kids and paying off exorbitant mortgages. The fusion is done. The drama is over.
But what is left behind is incredibly, unbreakably dense.
Yes. The sheer density of 60 continuous years of shared memory. They are glowing entirely on the stored emotional energy of a lifetime spent together. It's quiet, it's not flashy, it doesn't make good reality television, but it's the most enduring, indestructible heat in the universe. Listen to this final line of that section. The trick to a successful life is to appreciate the blinding light while the fusion is easy, and to have built up enough density to keep glowing when things get heavy and the active fuel runs out.
It is a stunningly poetic, deeply comforting way to view aging and long-term commitment. It completely removes the tragedy from the natural cooling down of youthful passion and reframes it as a necessary, beautiful, inevitable transition into an incredibly stable, permanent state of being.
Right. If you try to artificially stay a young star forever, burning through hydrogen at a massive rate, having affairs, chasing youth, you just eventually burn out and collapse. You have to gracefully accept the transition to the white dwarf.
Well, this deep, almost spiritual connection between the mechanics of the sun and the human psyche isn't a modern concept born of astrophysics, is it? Look at the next section you have there. The mythological mappings. We've known this all along.
Oh, yes. From Amaterasu to St. Valentine. We humans have always known this instinctively in our bones.
Yeah.
Long before we had spectroscopy or orbital mechanics or understood what a photon was, we were mapping the sun directly onto the chaos of human relationships. Look at the ancient Greeks. Helios, or later, Apollo.
Shining, perfectly beautiful, and highly destructively problematic.
Exactly. The text jokes that Apollo was the god of light, who was frequently found pursuing terrified nymphs with a level of relentless persistence that would, in today's society, immediately result in a restraining order. He represented the blinding, aggressive, inescapable heat of the sun, the toxic, overwhelming intensity of a love that consumes you against your will. Then, on the other hand, you have the Egyptian myth, Ra.
Ra was the ultimate creator, but more importantly, the source of all matat, which translates roughly to cosmic order, truth, and balance. It explicitly included the social order of the family and enduring love. So in Egyptian mythology, the sun represents the hydrostatic equilibrium we were talking about earlier, the stabilizing, necessary gravitational force of the family unit holding society together against the chaos of the dark.
But the absolute best one here, the one that perfectly bridges the gap between astrophysics and psychology, is the ancient Japanese myth of Amaterasu, the great sun goddess. I didn't know this story before today. It says she got so incredibly fed up with her brother's toxic nonsense, he was the storm god, being completely chaotic and destructive, ruining her rice fields, that she simply gave up, went and hid in a deep cave, and rolled a massive rock over the entrance. She shut him out.
And because she was literally the sun goddess, when she hid in the cave, the entire world was immediately plunged into permanent darkness and freezing cold.
Yeah.
The literal agricultural winter, but also the emotional winter. The world began to die.
And all the other gods naturally panicked. But they didn't get her out by reasoning with her, with logic, or with threats or bribes. How did they get the sun to come back out?
They threw a massive party.
Yes. They set up a bronze mirror outside the cave entrance, and they started laughing and dancing and having a brilliant, raucous time. They used social warmth to lure back the physical warmth. She heard the laughter, got curious, peeked out of the cave, saw her own glorious, radiant reflection in the mirror they had placed, and the light returned to the world.
It's a profound, highly accurate psychological observation embedded directly in ancient myth. When we lose love, or when we fall into a deep depression, which is effectively the internal sun hiding in a cave, we universally describe it as a dark time. We use solar language without thinking. We say things to our partners like, "You are my sunshine."
And the author nails it here. This isn't just lazy songwriting by pop musicians. It's a deep-seated neurological archetypal mapping. We literally perceive the presence of a loved one as a stabilizing gravitational force that brings actual biochemical light to our personal solar system. Without it, we are just cold rocks tumbling aimlessly through the void.
And that profound biological necessity for light, it poses a really interesting and slightly terrifying existential question for our future as a species. Which brings us to the final section of your notes there.
Ah, yes. The photosynthetic heart. This bit sent my head absolutely spinning. It says, technically, from a purely biological standpoint, humans are sun-eaters.
Well, it's biologically accurate when you trace the energy chain. Plants turn raw sunlight into chemical energy via photosynthesis. We eat the plants, or we eat the cows and chickens that ate the plants. Every single ounce of energy we expend, every footstep we take on this gravel path, every word we are speaking right now, every time you hug a partner or write a love letter, is at its base metabolic root, recycled, repackaged solar energy.
We are just walking, talking vessels of repackaged sunlight. It is completely mental. And for our listener, mental just means absolutely crazy to think about. But the text asks a harrowing question. As we look toward the technological future, what happens to human love when we lose our connection to the actual sun?
It brings up the science fiction realities that are rapidly becoming science fact. Long-term space travel, generational colony ships, living in subterranean, radiation-shielded colonies on Mars, or honestly, even just living our current lives increasingly inside the metaverse, staring at VR headsets in dark, windowless rooms.
Right. If we move into deep space colony ships where the sun is nothing but a series of timed LED panels on the ceiling, does our capacity for deep solar-driven bonding diminish? If we aren't getting those massive beta endorphin hits from actual authentic UV rays hitting our skin, do we slowly devolve into a colder, more detached, less loving species? Do we lose our humanity when we lose our star?
We are already seeing the preliminary damaging stages of this exact phenomenon. The text points out how artificial blue light from our phones and laptops is severely disrupting our SEN, our master biological clocks. It's ruining our circadian rhythms, destroying our sleep architecture, and, by extension, throwing our hormonal balance into chaos. It is making us measurably more irritable, more depressed, and significantly less capable of connecting with the person sitting right next to us on the sofa. We are artificially altering our solar environment, and our relationships are suffering deeply for it.
I am genuinely gobsmacked by this thought. And mate, to be gobsmacked means to be utterly shocked and astounded. If we eventually leave the solar system to colonize the stars, we might actually leave our biological capacity for human love behind on Earth. Unless the text suggests we might need to invent something called synthetic love protocols.
Synthetic love protocols. Meaning, architects of these colony ships would have to build full-spectrum lighting directly into the architecture, specifically calibrated and timed to aggressively trigger dopamine and serotonin release, alongside mandatory hormonal supplements, just to artificially mimic the physiological effect of a summer afternoon in Sussex.
We would literally have to artificially drug ourselves and use mandatory light therapy pods just to keep from tearing each other apart in the coldness of deep space. Because, as the author concludes with a massive gut punch, a life without the sun is cold, but a life without love is simply uninhabitable.
It brings the entire massive document full circle. We are, at our very core, creatures of the light. Our biology, our romantic metaphors, our physics of connection, our hormonal cycle, they are all inexorably tied to the mechanics of that specific yellow dwarf star currently shining above us.
Let's just slow down our pace a bit. Take a deep breath of this park air. We've covered a genuinely massive amount of conceptual ground here today. From the microscopic cellular hits of dopamine and vitamin D on our epidermis, all the way to the massive galaxy-spanning astrophysics of white dwarfs and orbital mechanics. I really hope for you walking alongside us today that this conversation makes you appreciate the literal sunshine hitting your face right now in a completely different, much deeper way. It's not just warming your skin up, it's actively chemically knitting you into the fabric of the human race.
It certainly permanently changes my perspective on a sunny Sunday stroll. But I do have one final, rather provocative thought for you to chew on, building directly on that idea of space travel and the future of the species.
Oh, lay it on me. Break my brain one last time before we get coffee.
We've established over the last hour that all of our human emotional architecture, our poetry, our hormones, our romantic timing, our entire concept of warmth and pair bonding evolved entirely under the steady, reliable light of this one specific, highly stable yellow dwarf star.
Right. The sun has been remarkably consistent for billions of years, providing a stable environment for us to evolve these traits.
Exactly. But imagine for a moment an alien species that evolved on a planet orbiting a completely different type of star. Say, a volatile, chaotic twin-sun binary system, where the gravitational forces are utterly erratic and the light cycles are completely unpredictable. Or a dim, violent red dwarf star that constantly blasts its closely orbiting planets with deadly atmosphere-stripping radiation.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
If their biology, their SCN, their hormones were forged in that specific solar furnace, would their fundamental biological capacity for love, their equivalent of pair bonding and intimacy, be something completely alien, terrifying, and totally unrecognizable to us? If love is just a biological reflection of the star you orbit, what on earth does love look like under a violent red sky?
Wow. That is, I don't even know how to begin to answer that. That fundamentally changes how you think about every sci-fi movie ever made. Love isn't universal. Love is localized to the star. Oh, hang on, mate. Stop. Look at this right here.
What is it?
We have a rogue goose, a massive, incredibly angry-looking one. It has completely blocked the path ahead, it is standing its ground, and it is giving me a look that suggests it has absolutely zero beta endorphins flowing through its system right now.
It does look remarkably hostile. It's practically hissing. I really don't think its Coulomb barrier is going to yield to our external pressure.
Right. We're going to have to alter our orbit. Let's head across the grass this way toward the cafe, stay strictly in the Goldilocks zone, give it a very wide berth. Honestly, the wildlife in this park,